Hi, and welcome to the AWS Developers Podcast. I'm Roman Jordan, and today I'm joined by Simon Martinelli. Simon is a Java champion based in Switzerland. He's very active on social media and Java conferences where he talks about spec-driven development. So I wanted to sit down with him to understand how he sees spec-driven development and how it works in his job because he's working with customers to implement this at scale. So very interesting discussion. I hope that you will enjoy it. And if that's the case, feel free to subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite podcast application or on YouTube. Thank you. Hey, Simon, welcome to the AWS Developers Podcast.
Hello, Roma. Pleasure to be here.
Thanks. So, how are you?
I'm great. It's Friday afternoon, close to weekend. It's perfect.
Yeah, indeed. So I'm really looking forward to our discussion today because we are going to discuss a hot topic, which is how AI is transforming the software development lifecycle, or SDLC. And I know that you are publishing a lot around that topic. You talk about spec-driven development. You talk about AI unified process and many other things that are related to this. So I would love to jump right in on this topic and you know um, get your perspective on the dynamic and how those AI capabilities are enhancing the developers and probably other roles as well. But first, let's start with an introduction. So, who are you, Simon?
Yeah, I'm from Switzerland
Yeah.
and I'm a software engineer for 30 years already. I'm mainly active in the Java ecosystem. So I'm doing development, architecturing work with customers. And lately I do a lot of AI driven stuff with my customers. And I'm working for companies in Switzerland like wholesale companies, retail, insurance companies, government. So more or less from small to big companies. I'm self employed since 2009. And I'm also a teacher at two universities in Switzerland.
Okay, perfect. So you are a Java champion as well,
Yes, I am.
right? Yeah, and so you have your own consultancy, a company. So
Yeah,
you are helping customers
exactly.
implement and adopt new technologies like AI to build
Yes.
applications. Okay, cool. Sounds good. All right. So yeah, as I was saying, you are very active on social media to talk about this new world of development with AI. You talk about spec-driven development. So let's start with spec-driven development. What is spec-driven development? I know that you published recently a post about the different flavors of spec-driven development that you see. So love to hear your thoughts about that.
Yeah,
And
maybe I can start with talk about how I went into spec-driven development
yeah.
because I'm at the sports club in Switzerland, um, and the sports club has a lot of requirements for software. So they need, like, currently I'm working on a volunteer management system for my sports club. This will be also used by music festivals sooner or
Mhm.
later. It's currently in the beta phase. And I started with that because a friend of the sports club said, "Hey, we have a volunteer management system, but that's not very good." And you're a software engineer. I know that because you already created other software for us. So
Mhm.
just create a new system. And now we have AI that must be very simple and very easy and very fast to do. And this was like fall 2024. And
Okay.
I started vibe coding. So I didn't have any ID. And I just did that. And finally, I had something. It worked. But I was completely lost. I had no idea what I implemented. I had no idea how to change the system now. The code was not very good back in the day because the tools were not that good as we have it today. So, and I was struggling a bit, and that was around Christmas. And finally, I saw a post of from Simon Maple from Tesla. He's also a Java champion. I know him as well. And he was writing about spec-driven development. And I thought, spec-driven development, that sounds about that what I really need here. So I need some specs. How can I do that? And Tesla was working on spec-driven development back then, but there was probably nothing else, or I didn't have a look at any other tools that are around. And I thought myself, okay, what worked in the past? What were specs for me? And for me, specs were like system use cases, for example. And I started to, or I throw away the whole application, and I started from scratch again. This time with requirements, with use case models, with specs, and it worked much better than before. So I came to the conclusion, and that's what you said before about different flavors of spec-driven development. I think you can do spec-driven development without any special tools. So it required some discipline to do that. So it's you need to take care of the quality of your specs and so on. But it works very well. So my AI unified process that you already mentioned is inspired by the rational unified process from many, many years ago. But I just took the unified process because I defined a process around spec-driven development, not only a way to work. So it's more like it starts with a vision, it ends with deployment. So it should cover the whole development process. And the system use cases are just in the center for me as a spec because this spec can be read by business people, by developers, by testers. So everybody that is involved in software development can read these specifications, and that's something that's very important to me. But spec-driven just means we write down what we want, and AI is generating from that specification.
Okay. So basically, what you're saying is that we are kind of moving away from a code-centric world and more uh, a spec-centric world where specs are the source of truth for what we intend to a system to run.
Yep,
Is that more or less
absolutely.
what you? Okay.
Yeah, that's very important because I am working in software modernization projects for the last 7 to 8 years already. And we always have the same problem. We have no specs. We have just code.
Yeah.
And a lot of developers tell me, hey, specs don't work because the code is the truth. But I could show you some code. You don't want to have that as the truth, right? So that's not true. So it's true that the code is the thing that runs finally.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that that's the truth in terms of the business intent. So that's probably what was created after over the years, but it's probably no longer that what the business people thought that it should do. So we have kind of a gap between intent and finally code. And my hope with spec-driven development is we'll move to specs, which, as I said, can be understood by everybody involved in the software project, and they can agree on that spec. And so generating code and tests and other artifacts from specs is just the final um, move to make it run, right? But we should try to, like domain-driven design says, we should collaborate with business and development and operations and everybody, so we can build a solution and not just generate code. That's the
Can you elaborate a bit about the system use case that you described earlier? So it seems that you are making a point about the fact that we really need to focus on that system use case before talking about any task specs.
yeah,
Or so, can you elaborate on that?
yeah. So there is a distinction between business use cases and system use cases. So business use cases are in usually like business processes or things that the business people want to do. Even with or without software, that doesn't really matter. But the system use cases is something that the business want to automate or to have software about. So a system use case describes the behavior from kind of a user perspective. So that means we have actors in the system. For example, if you're building kind of what could we do? We could do a hotel reservation system, for example. There you have the guest or you have the manager of the hotel. These are actors in the system. And then you have a use case like search for available rooms. That could be the use case. And then you have preconditions like, for example, there must be hotel rooms in the system, for example, the user needs to be authenticated or not, depends on the system you want to build. And then you have a main flow. So that means the users, for example, enters the date from to that he wants to stay, then the number of people, then it clicks on the search button, a list of available rooms will be displayed, and then he can select the room and so on. So that's the main flow. And then you may have alternative flows. For example, we don't have an available room, so the user gets an error message, or the user cancels the processes, closes the application, and goes somewhere else. And then finally, you have post conditions like the room is selected and reserved, for example, for the customer. That could be a post condition. And finally, you can add business rules, for example, so that, for example, the to date must be after the from date. From date can be earliest today, for example. And then you can also add additional material. So if you're doing UI development, you can add UI mockups like Figma designs, for example, or you can add diagrams that visualize the flow of the application, or screenshots, or whatever you have. And that all forms a use case. And because the use case exactly defines what the user wants to do with the system, we can directly use that to generate code and tests uh, out of that. So if you can do that directly or not depends on your stack. So if you have a very narrow stack, you have a design system, for example, you have a clear architecture, you have examples for tests, you have examples for implementation, like skills, for example, if you use agentic AI, then the code can directly generate it from that use case. Also, the tests can directly be generated. If that's not so clear, or if you're not building kind of a UI application, you're creating more like a library, or maybe more
An
like
API.
an API, then maybe you will go into what you do with Amazon Kira, for example, to create like a plan and then tasks that will help AI to guide the code. So in my case, I'm mostly doing business applications. I directly use the system use cases to generate the code.
Okay. So it seems to be you seem to be to make a difference between the system use case and requirements as defined in tools like Kiro.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So what is missing in let's say Kiro's specs that or requirements that you I mean what there's nothing that would prevent a user to define what you just said, explaining, okay, this is those are the user stories, so this is the behavior that we expect
Yep.
the system to respond to a user interaction, like
Yeah.
searching hotel room. So, what is the nuance that you see there?
Yeah. I think the nuance is that it's in what you already said now. It's a lot of people, at least since we have Scrum and other agile methodologies, went back from use cases to user stories. And I also have a blog post about that, because personally I don't like user stories at all, because user stories hide flow and business rules in acceptance criteria.
Tell me more.
So it's not very clear. You know, you have a sentence like, we want as a user, I want to search for hotel rooms that I
Yes.
can book a room.
Yeah.
That's my user story.
Okay.
Now, everything that I said that is, in my case, business rules, preconditions, or postconditions, are hidden in acceptance criteria.
Okay. Got it.
So you cannot go to a user story and read it top down. You are not done yet with the user story, right? Because
Yeah.
the system use case is done. So the user says, okay, that's exactly the flow. So that's my use case that I have. I
Yeah.
know I want to have these steps. I want to have these alternative flows. Please implement, right? But if you have a user story, someone, mostly the engineer, needs to go ahead and say, okay, we have the acceptance criteria, we have the user story. Now let's create a plan. But I don't need that with the system use case, because in the system use case, the plan is already included. Plus,
Okay.
maybe already the tasks are included. So that means, in that term, like a system use case, in my opinion, can combine user story, plan, and task
Okay.
in one go.
So does it mean that, in your view, the approach that Kira has is more a developer-centric approach, where basically the developer has to make the decisions and make sure that it thinks about the different conditions and the way we want to behave in edge cases and so on. Whereas what I think you are describing is that the system use case is more like a contract between the business and the development team that is going to agree on how we want the system to behave. It's not left to the developers to figure it out. It's kind of a contract. Is that fair?
That's the perfect conclusion. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. So that's what I describe in, or that's what I call different flavors. So
Okay.
my idea is really I want to enable business people to write specs,
Mm-hmm.
and the engineer just is the enabler or the orchestrator for the business people to allow them to generate code based on their specs. Whereas Kiro or SpecKit or BMate or whatever methodology or tool is focusing on the engineering part. So
Yeah.
that means my process covers everything. So I don't cover it right now, but I'm also working on the requirements part. That's very important. We have the International Requirements Engineering Board, for example. They just released a new micro credential. It's called AI for Requirements Engineer, and they describe some techniques and ideas how they could do requirements engineering with the help of AI. And I
Okay.
try to incorporate these ideas from there also in my process, so that I finally have kind of a process for the whole um, team that is working on the software, and not only for a engineering perspective. And that's also a bit based on my background, because as I said, I'm doing a lot of modernization. I want to have the specs that it could be used in like 10 years to generate the application again, maybe with other tools. So my approach is completely tool agnostic. I use everything as a markdown. I use Mermaid and Plan2ML, which are also diagram as code.
Yeah.
So that's absolutely uh, doesn't matter which agent you use, which tool you use. That simply doesn't really matter. So it's just an approach that is tool agnostic, and that's something that I work on because I don't want to build any tools. So tools, you are tools, or Amazon can build tools, or other vendors can build tools, but I don't do tools. I just do processes.
Okay. So I think what you describe is the fact that for modernization use cases, I mean, basically, if you want to have a future-proof application, having those system use cases super well defined will make the underlying technology irrelevant, and hence will make all the modernization projects easier to maintain or to handle in the future. Because let's say that you are running you build your application with Java 11, and but because you had so much description about all the processes in the system use cases, that nothing would prevent you to do an easy migration to Java 25 and using the new Springboard 4 or whatever underlying technology. So basically, you decouple all the business intelligence from what is hard coded in code.
Exactly. So, and this approach works very well. I do workshops based on my process, and I did it for Java. I do it for JavaScript. It really doesn't matter which one. I use the same example with the same specs or with the same system use case, and I can generate that. The magic having it tool agnostics lies then in the agent. So I need, for example, if I use Cloud Code or anything else, it doesn't really matter which one. Um, then we need agents markdown file or MD file or Claude MD. We need skills. We need other things but they are not related to the spec. They're related to the implementation. So the better the guardrails and guidelines are for implementing the system use cases, the better it works. And that's why I don't need the plan and task phase. because this then is integrated in hopefully in the skills. So I build skills for my process. I have a skill for I'm doing mostly development with Vadin, that's a Java
Yeah.
UI framework with Spring Boot, and Juke, that's a SQL library for Java. And there I have skills with templates and guidelines and MCP servers that help the agent to build the application. So that's pretty clear how you should do that, or how it should do that. So to say. So if I have a use case that says implement like a search form with a table as results, then it exactly knows how to do that because there are guidelines showing that.
Okay. So basically, you have a set of skills available to build using specific patterns and specific libraries like Vadim and
Yeah.
so on that can build and translate your system use case into code,
Yep.
basically.
It also have a large impact on architecture, by the way. So that's something people don't talk about, because currently we have like a move back to monolithic applications. So we had like microservices 15 years ago, then
Yeah,
everybody did microservices. They failed because the microservices were too fine grained usually, and now they're moving back to monolith. But that's not a good idea.
no,
So because you don't want to have, I mean, if you have a large application, you have a high cognitive load to understand the application right.
for
So
sure.
also the agent has a high cognitive load, and
Exactly,
the agent
same.
doesn't have infinite context. So the smaller the application part that you're building, the simpler for the agent to know about everything, right?
Well, I think what we alluded to earlier when you described the system use case is that basically it aligns to your domain
Yeah, exactly.
and it's domain driven
Yeah,
development.
and you should use the bounded context ID and build your application or split your application into bounded context so that you really have like the main model that just is for that part you're currently building on. So you can reduce the cognitive load of everybody involved in the project, but also you can reduce the context size of the agent. And I'm using an architecture style, it's called self-contained system.
Yep.
It's initially defined by Stefan Tilko, who
And you
unfortunately passed.
presented that at Devox in Belgium, right? That was your talk,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's a very nice way to build applications because it involves everything. So it involves UI, backend, database, and that's also something very important in my opinion. A microservice architecture where you have a detached UI somewhere, that's not a good fit for AI because then you can not implement the user story or system use case at once, because then you split your application in two parts. That means
Anymore.
so if you do regular microservices, then you have a backend service, right, with the REST
Yes.
API.
Yeah.
And then you have a UI with another team that's building the UI.
Mm-hmm.
From a user perspective, that's nonsense, right?
Yeah.
Because the user has a UI and the UI stores data in the database. That's his mental model. That's not
Okay.
split.
I thought that you were saying the contrary. I thought that you said that having a um, a micro-contained application was making the AI. It was making it difficult for the AI. But you are saying the contrary, right? You're saying that it makes the flow easier for the user to understand, but also for the AI.
Yeah, you should have everything in one project. So
Yeah.
UI and backend should be together because you don't need to split that because AI can do both. And so it doesn't make sense to split front end and back end. Uh, Maybe technical if you have JavaScript front end and the Java backend, then you have a split. But this should be in a single repo, and you should create everything from front end to back end at once. Because
Yeah.
you don't have a front end and a back end developer anymore, because you have AI and AI can do everything. And if you want to implement a system use case at once, you have both back end and front end together. And that's very important. And that's also sometimes a difficulty to adapt that now, because some companies have monolithic front ends
Yes.
and they have multi fine grained microservices. And now, how do you do the spectrum development with that?
And also teams are often siloed.
Yeah,
You have the backend team, and then you have the front end people, and
exactly. And
yeah.
that means you need to split. I mean, that's something that you do also today. If no matter if you use user stories or system use case, you have to split that during planning, right? You have to say, okay, that's a user story. We want to search for available hotel rooms. Now we have to split it in front end and back end. That's called the Conway's law
Yeah.
inverse maneuver or something like that, right?
Exactly. Well defined in the team topologies
Yeah.
book. Yeah,
Uh, but
totally.
but you should have both together. So that's much simpler for the AI because it can see both. It can see front end and back end, and can validate if the front end rules are the same as in the back end and stuff like that. So you should avoid to split that in two teams
Yeah.
anymore.
So how do you approach a complex application comprised of different UI? How do you so you define system designs that you would design systems, sorry, that you unify. But how do you merge your different UIs? Because if you say that you have maybe a team of agents working on one domain and another team of agents working on another domain, how do you what's the approach to have them combine the UI at the end?
The question is if it needs to be combined. I mean, self-contained systems say that you interact or you integrate UIs with simple links. And if you do your domain work correctly, then you will have bounded contexts that are very separate from each other.
Yeah,
So they don't
but
have
let's take
full,
the example of the hotel
yeah.
reservation system.
So, so it,
You have your front end, and in here you can do search. You can do maybe I can go and look at my previous booking. I can go in my profile. So those are
yeah.
three different domain, basically. So how do you bring them into one umbrella?
In fact, these what you described are probably is in the same domain because that's all the hotel reservation.
Sure.
But you probably can split is the room management. So managing rooms, managing hotel rooms, whatever you need for that is probably in a separate domain. But if you have self-contained system, you usually have data replication. So you don't have APIs between the bounded contexts.
Sure.
You usually somehow maybe event driven, maybe simple by database replication, whatever fits for the requirement. You will probably uh, take the hotel room information from the hotel manage or from the room management system and use it in the hotel reservation system. So that probably is the split.
Yeah.
And then you have your own room object in the reservation system, and in the room management system probably the room has additional attributes that you don't need to book the room. But and also in the room management system you probably don't have the price because the price is not relevant for managing rooms,
Mm-hmm.
but it's relevant for selling rooms. So you have probably a kind of a price, dynamic pricing depending on the
Different
demand,
business rules.
something
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
And this is based in the reservation system because you need the price there.
Okay.
And then finally, you have like an invoicing system, for example. So if you do B2B selling, you send an invoice and not to the customer, for example, if they book for a conference or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
This will be the invoicing bounded context. And there you have also event driven communication, probably because all the reservations will be replicated to the invoicing system. And there only the price that is relevant for the booking is relevant and not all the other prices for the other days, right? So you really have this split bounded contexts, and then you will have very dedicated bounded contexts without much communication in between. And so that's again a very good fit for AI.
Okay. Good. So if I summarize what we have discussed recently, so basically, um, you're advocating for several things here. One is that we need to change the workflow of ideation, basically, with the business people, where basically one of the key artifact that comes out of this ideation phase is a system design that a system use case. Sorry,
Yep.
that is basically a contract between the intent that the business is asking and the cooperation from the engineering to go and implement that.
Yep. Exactly.
Okay. Then you said that we need to have a domain driven approach for the implementation, and it's basically we see that in a self-contained type of architecture that where AI can look at the full chain in this domain.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah.
And so maybe we have different agents running in parallel, or so we have different sub agents. So do you distribute the task between different agents? One that is more expert in Vadim, one which is more expert in database, or you don't know. You said that no, I need a one advanced model like Opus, and that works.
Currently, that works. I mean, it depends a bit on how complicated or how special your application is that you're building. I was experimented with sub agents as well, so dedicated agents for all the things that I do, but the results were not much better. In my opinion, the results get better as more code as you have, because that's obvious, right? Because AI will look at what's around already, and then it will copy the concepts, the patterns that it finds, and then it will implement it the same way. So that's something that's very helpful, in my opinion. So that the first shot, so if you implement the first system use cases, you should steer a lot. So you should think about, oh, okay, the code doesn't really look like I want it to be. And then you have to think about why. And then it usually turns out that maybe I could add a skill that adds a template that gives guidance, or maybe I have a library that the AI doesn't know well. Maybe I can create an MCP server, for example.
Sure.
That's what
Yeah,
I
yeah.
did. Or you could add guidelines in the Markdown, in the agents, or in the Claude file, whatever tool you use. And then I mean, it's an iterative process, and it will get better. And that's also something that's very important. It takes a while to get used to the way to work, right? So it's not, I mean, a lot of people think they can just start and then it will automatically work and it's magic and everything will be fine. And suddenly it doesn't work and they say, oh, that's not usable. And I go back to traditional development and so
Yes.
on. And I went to that, that's, you have to go there somehow, and to figure out how it works for you and how you work best. And it also changes a lot in the team topology, because you need way smaller teams.
Yes.
So currently, I'm doing modernization of an ERP system for a wholesale company in Switzerland, and we are teams of two.
Okay. Wow.
And we have a product owner. We have direct access to the end users, or to the business people. We do reverse engineering of the system use cases based on the old system.
Okay.
And we extract business logic, for example, from the old system. Then we discuss that with the business or with the product owner, and then we start to implement that. And we can't be too much people, because otherwise we would interfere somehow,
Mm.
because we have a lot of time to discuss while the agent is running, right? So
Okay.
we don't have to sit at the computer constantly. And we also do sometimes, I mean, a lot of people say, okay, if you do spec-driven development, you shouldn't touch the code. Now, you shouldn't do that, really, because you shouldn't change something that then is not the same as in the specs, right?
Correct.
But sometimes it's helpful for AI that you say, okay, look, I changed that part of the code
Mm-hmm.
because I want to have a different pattern, and that's simpler than adding it to the guidelines. So you can say, okay, look at that class, for example, that's how we want to use it, put that in the guidelines, and then adjust the spec, and then it can rework on that. That's something that we do. We also do like pull request with AI. That's also very helpful.
Yeah.
So you can assign pull requests to some agent in the cloud, for example.
Can you tell more about that? So, because so far what we've been discussing is more the ideation phase and the production of code, but now we talk more about how it's going to be integrated into a larger code base and
Yeah,
then start the full integration
exactly.
piece. So,
So because we are just two people, we don't do pull requests normally. So what we do trunk-based development. Everybody is looking at each other's code as well. So we want to see that. In my project, I do pull requests for having additional reviews from AI, not from another person, but from AI, because AI is very good at pull request review because it will be very in deep review, because you always have the same. If you have a big pull request, no one looks at it. If it's very small, then you have a lot of discussion.
yes.
That's normal. So we try to avoid that in our team because we both know everything about the self-contained system we are currently working on. And so we
Okay.
don't need pull requests. So we
Yeah.
don't incorporate something. But we use pull requests as well for AI review. We also do, or what I do is check if the specification still matches the code,
Okay.
because that sometimes happen, right? Because you have a clear specification and the agent does something else, or it finds
Ah.
something and then it adds something that may be not in the specification.
So, as part of the PR review, you
Yeah,
have an agent that is looking after whether the code is aligned to the spec.
yeah, yeah,
And if
exactly.
there's a drift between the two, so what happens? Is the agent triggering reporting this to the coding agent and say no, you need to implement this way, or what's the process there?
Sometimes if there's a drift, it's usually that it's something implemented that is not needed. So this can be removed, for
Okay.
example. Or if it's, I mean, this doesn't happen when you do regular use cases, by the way. But for example, in my application, I have something like a subscription based payment model. And I was talking with AI how to do that and what kind of subscriptions plans we could have and stuff like that. And then it suggested things that were incorporated in use cases, but in the implementation, we had a drift from that.
Okay.
And there I was, again, using AI to discuss what's better, the code or the specs. In reality, because I'm the product owner in that project, in reality, with the custom project, we will go to the business people and tell, hey, we found here a potential enhancement. What do you think
Hmm.
about that? Should we incorporate that or should we remove it? That's something that could happen. But most often, it's not really about the code, it's more about the tests. So we try to, um, because also the system use cases are a great template for the tests, because it
Hmm.
has a flow, it has business rules and stuff like that. And what we do, we also tell AI that it should add um, annotations to the test code that we can directly have a link between, for example, the step in the flow and the test that is created.
Okay.
I'm currently working on, I said I don't do tools. That's not entirely true. I'm currently working on a tool where we can navigate from use cases to tests so that we can check if all the steps in a use case are tested, for example.
But
That's
do
something that we do.
do you do that as part of the PR review process, or as part of the development?
As part
Because
of the development process.
yeah, because
Yeah,
there's an opportunity to shift left
yeah,
those
exactly.
activities.
I mean, we have now, I mean, the agents have hooks. So this
Yep.
could be a hook, like
Hmm.
implement that, test it, and finally the hook says, okay, now check if the whole use cases is tested, for example.
Yes.
And all that drift management could be part of a hook for it. That would probably a very good idea to add that to a hook. Usually, or currently, we are doing that from time to time. So most often we implement something, then we show it to the end users because it's modernization, right? And then we have get new input and we incorporate that in the system use case, and then we do the drift management. So we do that. And what we also don't do, by the way, is we don't regenerate code. We apply the changes of the use cases to the code, because regenerating everything would be too slow. So
Yes,
that's
and it would generate, I mean, consume too many tokens anyway.
absolutely. And it
So
would not probably not result in the same result because it's non-deterministic. So it doesn't make sense. Because I just say that because I have a lot of discussion about people who say spec-driven development is the same as model-driven development that we had 20 years ago, but that's not. Because model-driven was a way to define a model with a DSL that then could be directly generated code from the model, but the model was like, or the generation was deterministic because the model was the source of truth and we generated the code, and you get always the same code, at least if you use the same version of the generator.
true.
But here
Yeah.
we don't have that, right? We have AI, and AI is statistics and will not generate the same result any time you use it. So that's a bit of a difference.
So just to make sure I got it correctly. So if the review agent identified a drift, it's going to change directly the code,
Yeah,
the piece of code. It's not going to go back to a coding agent to say, "Hey, you should have done this like this." It's going to restart a new developer cycle. Instead, you say, "No, the review agent is able to interject. Say, no, this is how it should be." But then, how? I mean, do you have a double check? Do you have another reviewer that is going to check that this piece? Okay, so how
yeah,
does it work?
yeah. The point is, this process takes very long usually.
Yeah.
So it runs anyway on GitHub, so we don't care. But this takes long. So the review first, the review you plan, then executing the review, fixing the issues, that all takes time. I mean, we also have traditional tools for like ArcUnit for the architecture check. We have SonarCube for the code style and stuff like that. We use now Java with JSpecify to um, catch nullability issues, for example. So we have traditional tools that are also included. And we also have AI that fixes the SonarCube problems directly. So we use the
What do you mean the
SonarCube.
sonar cubes? So the cube, the ones that sonar cube has detected,
Yeah,
they,
exactly.
they come as an entry or for the AI to act upon.
Yeah, SonarCube has an MCP server.
Hmm.
So first of all, on GitHub, you get a SonarCube report that you can fix right away
Yes.
in the pull request. But if you don't use pull request, we can also tell AI, hey, here's SonarCube, check the problems, fix it. I think SonarCube, even by their own, incorporated some AI tooling on Sonar Cloud that you can directly fix it there. That's also possible if you have bidirectional access to the repo. But these are all guardrails that we have anyway, so that doesn't really differ from traditional software engineering.
Sure. But why don't you do that locally on your development, environment? Because you could run all of that. It could be part of the development,
Yeah,
loop that the coding agent has
I
with
really
hooks.
lately I really try to move away coding agents from my computer
Okay. Yeah.
because I try to let them run even if I'm not here. So I try a bit to parallelize and get more out of the agents, because when you start, you often sit there and watch the agent doing
Yes.
things, but that's probably not the thing that you should do.
Agreed.
And if you could do it, we work system use case by system use case, and we can work in parallel. So if we really have distinguished use case, or we work on two-bound context, for example, then
Yeah.
we can work in parallel. And we don't need to run it locally, because what happened to me, I have a MacBook, and I was at the customer side working on that, and I had to go home.
Yeah.
So I took my notebook, open, put it on the seat in the car, and it worked while I was driving home. And I
Yeah.
said, hey, that's a stupid idea. Why not move it to a virtual machine or to
Yeah.
somewhere
I
else?
I just say I have cloud desktop where I'm running those jobs in parallel, and whenever I close my laptop, it still continue to work, so it's all good. But I think my question was not necessarily related to the laptop, but to the coding agent environment before the PR. So, because there are so many activities that are happening in the pipeline, why don't we shift more of them left to this?
Ah, yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, you're right. No, absolutely. So it should be the responsible of the work that also the sonar cube fix problems should be fixed before they are there,
hit the
right?
PR.
Yeah,
Yeah.
before the PR. But very often it happens that something gets in anyway.
Yes.
So because we have special rules that are run on a. So with the customer, it's a bit special because we cannot access the SonarCube server from my local machine because it's in an internal network, right? So we have to wait for the build in the internal network to get the SonarCube results. There, it's a bit different, right? In all other cases, we have Sonar Cloud, and then we can access the rules directly from the local machine or from the agent, and then it works. So that's not an issue. So it really depends a bit on the
On the
whole setup
environment.
that we have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Good. Um, I'm going to ask you that question because last week I met with a customer and they asked me a question about release management that I did not really anticipate it because for many of the code that I've worked on and other companies have worked on, we had um, a continuous delivery approach. So you go through your pipeline, and then it's integrated into the workflow. But other companies are still heavily relying on release management. So would you have a point of view on how AI is changing this, and also because it's going to become quickly a bottleneck if if you produce so many codes and artifacts that are ready to go in prod, but release management is
Yeah.
blocking everything.
Yeah. I can talk about my customer that what we're currently doing. So they have now a release management cadence of 2 months. So they bring out a new version every 2 months.
Okay,
And we are completely changed that. So I mean, the old application is a monolith. It needs some coordination, so you can't do continuous delivery. That will not work,
for sure.
especially because the monolith is a single application, but has from the stakeholders different availability requirements.
Requirements.
So, for example, the order management system must run 7 days, 24 hours.
Hmm.
But many other parts of the application just need to run during office hours and
Okay,
Monday to Friday. So that's something that we changed. So we also think about the bounded context and the self-contained system in terms of stakeholders and in terms of operation hours, right?
okay,
And we are planning to do continuous delivery. We also working with test engineers because they do traditional test engineering now. So that means they do acceptance tests, they have manual tests, they have automated tests, but they run kind of detached. So that the development team is doing
yeah,
development, and then we have the release candidate, and then they do their tests, and then they say yes or no, and then and after each release there's a hot fix because they didn't catch everything. And next week, by the way, I will have with them sessions how they could do automated testing with Playwright. So they use a different tool now, and we are moving to Playwright because we want to include the automated testing. Uh, First of all, they should also use AI to generate the tests, by the way.
for sure. Yeah,
And we want to have everything in the pipeline. So we may have some manual smoke tests, right, where someone clicks and things and finally says it's okay or not. Don't know if we'll have that or not. But we plan to have everything automated. And that's something that we don't have currently, or the customer doesn't have currently. And that means the job of the testers, currently they are called testers, but I want to call them test
QA engineer, QA
engineer
engineer. Yeah,
because they do engineering. They don't do testing, right?
yeah,
They don't have to click. They do the engineering, and that's something that we are moving on. So we really want to go. It depends on a bit how critical the part of the application is. So if we have self-contained systems that are not non-critical, there we can really do continuous delivery
yeah,
because
for sure.
if
Yeah,
something happens, no one nothing is damaged, for example. So that doesn't matter. In other parts where it's very important that things run, maybe there we have to have some additional guardrails that nothing happens. But finally, we plan to do that. We didn't thought about canary deployment or blue green or something. I'm sure that will be one of the topics that we need to talk about as well. Because currently we have just a release, and if it fails, then we build a hot fix. But maybe we should have some other scenarios that we also can have. Maybe feature toggles could be a
Flags, yeah.
thing that we can also add to the game. And I think that changes. So DevOps, as DevOps was intended, is very important. It becomes more important. Platform engineering, also observability stuff, things like that, which also can, and that's a very, very big topic in my
Yeah.
opinion, where we
I think
can.
AI is a great amplifier of your flows in terms of maturity with regards to DevOps and release management, good practices, and because AI is going to speed up so many things that maybe the rest of your IT is not ready to support and absorb all those changes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, hopefully, not hopefully, luckily we have already a platform in place. So we have a Kubernetes or OpenShift platform. So everything is ready. We are
Yeah.
currently working on the database management stuff that this can be better automated and also split into smaller parts. So we have a database engineer that are helping us. And we really move away from a traditional deployment or heavy deployment, more like to lightweight deployment that we really can do that. And I think we are quite ready. I mean, with my project, I'm ready anyway because that's my single project that works very well. Beginning in March, I will work for an insurance company. That will be a very different environment because they are way bigger and they have microservice architecture, a big one, and requirements engineering, and the application is a bit detached, more detached, let's say. And there I'm very curious because they also plan to use spec-driven development, and they also start with requirements engineering first, and there we will see how we can do that. So with kind of a brownfield project, how to put that into the game and what do we need to reverse engineer that AI can understand and implement features, for example. That will be a very important thing, I think, because most of the business applications are anyway legacy applications. They are not
Yes.
new.
Yeah.
And we must find a way because you cannot go there and say, okay, just reverse engineer all the use cases that you have in the system. That first of all, it takes too long. Then someone has to review it, and so we need to find a way there how we can start small in certain parts of the application. Yeah, it's very interesting, but and it speeds up a lot. So people say AI is not. I mean, Gartner said like 5 to 10% or something like that because they probably only looked at the development part, but
What do you mean 5 to 10% what?
Gartner has a study that says AI is accelerating software development by 5 or 10%.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
probably read that as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah, totally.
And that's because they don't have a holistic view on the software engineering process. And you
Correct.
really must focus on everything from the end users that have requirements to the operations people at the end that need to run the application. And
Yeah,
in
totally.
between there is a lot that you can accelerate. And I'm currently working for a government doing a proof of concept with that approach to see if they could be faster in doing software. And also in government, because that's very special, because they have this WTO requirements, so they need to, everything has to be public, and they have to have very difficult procurement processes and stuff like that. And their AI could shift also a lot to the left, because if you have the spec clear, the company that is gaining or getting the project may do less or maybe they don't do any, they don't need any. So I don't know how this will happen, but I think they could do a lot of applications much more cost efficient, so to say, because if they would invest more in specification but on their own side and not do a vague requirements catalog and then everybody needs to work on that, then probably also software in a field where you have a lot of regulations or you have a procurement process or something like that could be cheaper. Or not cheaper. Cheaper is always not a good idea or not a good word. Maybe more efficient.
Efficiently, yeah,
That's
and
the better
more
word.
quickly. I think the biggest challenge that I see among my customers is how they can translate the generation of code that is going much faster into shipping application faster and being able to respond to market needs or to the business requirements or and with quality with I think cost is of course really important, but and the time to market basically or ability to
Yeah,
ship faster
absolutely.
is something that most are struggling with.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about, let's take our hotel reservation system from the
Hmm.
beginning. If I sit with the hotel owner, he can tell me what he wants. So, and we can change it right away.
Yeah,
So I don't need to go back and work on that for a week and then get to him and say, "Heck, okay, is that what you want?" And he says, "No, that's not what I want." So the feedback loop is much faster. And I'm really curious if the business people are ready for that, because now they could create some requirements and then it takes a month and then they get something and it and now it speeds up a lot.
yeah.
So they really get new versions every day and they should look at it and work on that. And also the shift from, I mean, currently you have like or a product owner, for example, and a
Hmm.
team of 5 developers. But this must change, right? Because you need more probably coordination, more review of the specs, for example, and less coding work. So this has a big shift. So we're going back to software engineering away from coding. So
Yeah.
probably that changes a lot. And what also changes, by the way, we no longer use Confluence or Jira or such tools. We do everything in Git repos with Markdown.
Yes, that's a very good point. That's my experience as well. I feel that all this ceremony around having your epic and everything in a system like this, it's useless in a world where AI is and where you have your MD file and your specs that are well
Yeah,
defined. You probably don't need that.
yeah. We also don't do Scrum
Hmm.
because, as I said, we are a team of two.
Yeah,
We constantly work together. We don't need a meetup or a meeting. And we also have a backlog. The backlogs are
for
the use
sure.
cases, and we just need someone who tells us. Now, I mean, it's natural which the order of the use case that you have to implement. So we don't even have to have guidance. But if we had more use cases that are maybe distinct from each other, then someone had to tell which one is more important. And
Hmm.
then we can start with that. Uh, but it really doesn't need any more ceremonies from refinement and review and stuff like that because it just works.
Yeah.
And we also plan to have the test system open for the end users. So the users in the customer center, the call center agents could look at the new application. And so we get constant feedback. We
Feedback.
didn't do that right now because we just have to reach a level where it's for us at least that should be the way it should look in in future.
Hmm.
But at a certain point, we can really do continuous delivery also for business people. They can give early feedback and test it out and say if it's okay or not. And
Yeah.
so we get a much faster feedback loop.
Correct. Yeah. So Have you looked into AI DLC? This is like, I mean, what you described since the beginning. It's clearly also, I think it's super aligned with what we are doing. Also, supporting customers in their workshop and offering a a way to rethink the SDLC this way, having faster feedback loops like this, and indeed, I mean, we use Kiro spec-driven development, not as the starting point, but more downstream once we have really well defined what we are trying to achieve. I think what you described is super aligned with what we are doing with
Yeah,
our customers.
perfect. I mean, I had a workshop with Ricardo, so I know Kiro. I also did the labs during the workshop as well. I mean, it works. I like Kiro. It works very well, in my opinion.
But
Uh,
did you do the AI DSC workshops or just the Kiro
just the
workshops?
Kiro workshop, yeah,
Ah,
right,
okay,
an
that's
example.
the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
difference. That's the difference. Okay.
Now the other the things I get information from Ricardo as well. So he sent me some documents, and I was looking into it. And I mean, uh, whatever you call it, it's the same approach, right? So we really need to start with requirements,
Yes.
with the whole life cycle, not just with the middle part, because maybe
Agreed.
someday we don't need developers anymore. Don't know. Whatever people say, we don't need them.
We
I
don't
think
need
we,
coding
yeah,
capabilities, but we still need technical people with a strong understanding of systems and architectures. And
absolutely.
so our job as developers is changing. We will still need developers.
I think that, in my opinion, I do that for 30 years now, and I'm going back to my where I started. Because when I started as a software engineer at Swiss Railways back in the days, I was directly connected with the business people.
Yeah.
There were no business analysts, no product owners, no nothing, no, just me and the end users, more or less,
Yes. Hmm.
and someone from the operations team because I couldn't deploy to production. So that,
Yeah.
we just needed three people. And that's where we're going back now. So the difference is I'm not coding anymore, but I need to talk with the business people. I need to understand what they need. I need to create architecture. I need to create the guidelines. I need to create like the scaffolding of everything. So that's
Sure.
something that we didn't talk about. But when I start a project, I always scaffold the application by myself. I never let AI do that because AI relies on outdated information usually, and I want to have the newest thing and how I want it, and also that the guidelines could be generated then from the scaffolding, for example, and that's a very important part. And as you said, yeah, we will be more efficient, so we need people that are able to steer the development, to talk to all the stakeholders involved in the software development process to get the best solution.
Yeah. Have you watched Dr. Werner's Vogel keynote at the reInvent this year? He was
No,
talking
no,
about Renaissance developers. So yeah, his keynote was about the skill set that he anticipates developers to need in the near future, and I think one of them is to become T-shaped, where basically not only you have the technical depth, but also you broaden your knowledge and bleed across business and other
yeah, yeah.
categories.
Yeah, I think Martin Fowler also write a post about generalist, specialist, or something like that. I can't remember the title, and he said exactly the same. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's interesting when I talk with my peers of my age, so my colleagues from the university, for example. We did that already, right? So we were all generalists. We all did everything involved in the application. For us, it's not new. But for younger people that are not so long in the industry, that's very new, because a lot of things that they do currently, or they have to do, or they are not allowed to do, they must do in the future. So it really, I mean, it's great. I'm teaching at the university, and my students need to do everything. So they build applications, they have to deploy it and run it, and they even have to build their own Kubernetes cluster in one course that we have, and they do everything right. They knew what to do, and then they go to the companies and they are just allowed to program. But now we get back to people, as you said, that need to know everything about, or they need to have an idea what the software development process means and where they can work on. Yeah,
Correct.
exactly.
Okay. Any closing remarks before we conclude the episode?
No, it was great talking with you.
Yeah, I do have my three questions for the.
Okay, okay.
So, but I just wanted to see whether you had any closing remarks about AI. How do you call that again? Unified process, sorry, and spec-driven development. But if you have not, it's all good. So, do you have a book to recommend? Something that you highly recommend to anyone?
No, but I'm writing my own book at the moment.
Ah,
I'm writing a book about spec-driven development,
on that's good.
about my AI unified process for sure. So I cover everything from it's a pocket guide. It's not a big book, so you should be able to read it in a weekend.
Okay.
And but it describes the flow of requirements implementation testing without any tools. So first of all, how what you need to do about clarity of requirements, what makes a spec executable, for example. That's a very important topic. But I also mentioned tools like Kiro, for example, or Spec Kit, and that's what I'm working on. I hope it will be out in April.
In April
Hopefully, it
2026.
should be
Okay,
done in March, and then in April it should come out.
good. And so, will we be able to find this book on your website, or was it how are you going to distribute that?
Yeah, it will be published on my social media. It will be published by the A Press publisher,
Okay,
and you will see it. Hopefully,
nice. What are you going to learn next, or dive deeper on?
but I'm not very good at it at the moment. Is in orchestrating agents.
Ah, yeah.
So I really Rune Cohen. You probably know him from social media as well. He's from
Hmm.
Canada. He's doing Cloud Flow. I
Yep.
wanted to look at that, what it really does. I didn't have the time to do that because I like to improve the overall process. So currently, what I'm doing is I'm doing use case driven, one by one.
Yeah.
So implementation, testing, everything. But this takes probably half an hour, right? So I really like to have a way longer time frame to run. So not really the Ralph flow, right?
Yeah.
But something like that. So really a flow that I don't have to really monitor what AI is doing. So more like I just can start it and then go and do something else.
Yeah. That's
That's something that I'm currently working on. Um, what I really want to dive into more is not only using AI for software engineering, but also AI in applications. So we have some use cases at my customer. I used WAG, I created MCP service, but I just on the surface, not in depth, and I like to know more about that. So that's
with
something I
Spring
will do.
AI with what?
I use Spring AI, yeah.
The
and
M Bubble.
I and Bubble is the next one. I met Rod Johnson in Munich in December or in November. We were talking about Bubble, and that's also something I want to look at for sure. Yeah. Also, the whole things about skills, and I hope the AI companies will agree on a standard someday. So I mean, there's kind of a standard, but
Yeah, there's a de facto standard with skills.
somewhere you have to put it here, there you have to put it there. Also with the Agents MD or Claude MD, that's not standardized, but I hope they will standardize that somehow. Then it will be more agnostic to the tool or the model that you use. That's something I like to do. And there are so many tools and other models that I never tried because I usually use Cloud Code at the moment, just because it was there a year ago when I started. No, that's not true. I think the first birthday is tomorrow of Cloud Code. But I'm a very early adopter of Cloud Code, so I stick with the tool. So that's but there are many more. So I have a huge bucket list with things in the AI space that I want
Good. All
to
right.
look at.
And last question: what other developers should I interview next? Who would you recommend to have on the podcast?
There are a lot of other people. Yesterday or this week, for example, we had Thomas Schilling from Germany with us. That's a very young developer.
Okay, I don't know
He's
him.
working on something called Vue components, and he also does is in the Spring ecosystem, and he does a lot with AI as well.
Okay.
So he has kind of another. So he does the Ralph Wiggum stuff, for example.
Hmm.
That is something he's doing. Christian Sloff from the Spring team is very interesting. He's doing everything probably
Yeah.
at Spring AI from MCP to RAG to LLM integration, whatever. Yeah, that's the two guys that I'm currently working with, or I know quite well. Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay. I will have James Ward and Josh Long coming
Oh,
soon.
absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
They will come
James, I was
soon.
playing golf with James in Colorado. That's fun. That was fun.
That's perfect. All right. Thank you, Simon, for your time. And it was a great pleasure to talk to you and dive deeper into your flow and what you see working. And yeah, thanks for everything.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. It was a pleasure.
Likewise. Cheers. Bye bye.
Bye.